Hello and welcome everybody who's joining us from around the world. We are very pleased to have all of you joining today, and I hope wherever you are, it's a sunny day and you are looking forward to today's live stream. I'm Nick Hall and I'm the founder of the Digital Tourism Think Tank, and today I'm joined by Jeremy Jauncey, who is the founder and CEO of Beautiful Destinations. So hello Jeremy, welcome.
Hi Nick, how are you doing? And everyone on the line who's dialing in, who's watching, who's listening, you could be anywhere, you could be watching anything. So thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, we know the WTM audience is a global one. We know it's the whole travel industry, and it's obviously the biggest platform for the travel industry. So we're super excited that the guys at WTM put together this global hub. We think it's a really important resource that everybody needs right now. And I think one thing that is pretty clear is that what we all need right now is to come together, to share knowledge, and to navigate our way through this together. This is definitely not something that any one company, one individual, one organization can do on their own. And you guys are part of that. So perhaps just to give a bit of a lay of the land before we jump into the discussion, you've all got a question and answer tab on your screen. So we'll be fielding questions and answering as many questions as we can. So you can already start to drop in your questions if you're keen to get started straight away. So whether you're in Latin America, somewhere in Africa, Europe, North America, or Asia, you're all very welcome, and you're all in a very different and unique situation depending on where you are. So please do share with us your story and certainly ask your questions. So Jeremy, let's get straight into it and get started. Tell us a bit about Beautiful Destinations. Of course, I know you. Most people probably do know you, but perhaps not everybody knows about you. So let's start off with a bit of an understanding of what you do.
Yes, of course. So we are a strategy, creative, and marketing agency focused exclusively on the travel and tourism industry. Three central tenets to what we look at. Number one is the ability to empower leaders in this new digital economy where people are communicating, people are deciding where they travel, they're sharing their travel experiences on mobile and digital channels. And we believe that that is the absolute future of everything that happens in our industry. That's the first pillar. The second pillar is the ability then to use smart strategy to create content that will inspire people to travel, and understanding that really the way travel has been marketed in the past is not the way that travel is going to be marketed or should be marketed going forward, particularly after Corona. So helping leaders in travel and tourism to make the content that will resonate, whether it's top of the funnel, brand building, brand awareness stuff, or bottom of the funnel, how do you get people to actually book? And then third, we have also built one of the largest, if not the largest, tourism community in the world on social media. 25 million people in 180 countries around the world on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Weibo, all the platforms coming to us every day to be inspired about travel and tourism. And increasingly, as we see the world shifting towards more digital communication, that community of people has become incredibly powerful as a resource to interact with. And I know we're going to touch on that a little bit further.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Now, here at the Digital Tourism Think Tank, we dedicate everything we do to bringing together destinations, creating thought leadership on changes that are happening in the industry. And so obviously this moment right now is the most unprecedented moment of change. So rather than running away from the fire, we decided to run straight into it and upscale everything we're doing. So we hope that this joint force and this joint effort can really be there for you as an industry and help you to answer some of your questions or figure out the right strategic choices that you have. Jeremy, you and I are both, people who have kind of grown what we do in a digital world. And it is that digital world which is kind of part of this global pandemic problem, because it is, this interconnectivity of the whole world and all the travelers in the world that has kind of come about through digital, which has led to this. And you spoke about new channels like TikTok, which I must admit, even I'm trying to, get my head around, what is the audience there? But this is usually what we focus on, is how to be relevant, how to get onto these new channels and how to engage with audiences in these channels. But in today's discussion, I think we're going to dip in a different way and look at what we can understand from the audiences in those channels and what those groups of travelers and users can share with us in this unprecedented moment. So let's jump in and let's maybe kick off with a little bit framing what we're going to discuss today. So together with Beautiful Destinations, we have developed a new recovery alliance, and it's very simply a program where we're going to help the tourism industry through this journey of recovery, through a series of stages over the coming months to figure out and understand what's happening and to leverage some of those things that we just spoke about. And we're going to touch on some of those things today. I'll just put on the screen a little bit of an introduction to that. So we've been looking at the new marketing playbook in the new normal. And it really hinges on three things, right, Jeremy? It's understanding future travelers, using storytelling to be relevant, and how do we reinvent the marketing playbook and the community playbook. And this is certainly what we're going to focus on for today's call. So let's jump straight into that and start with the first point, which is, what do we understand about future travelers, and how are you guys using your audience to gather and leverage that understanding? What are you seeing?
Absolutely. So one of the biggest insights that we've seen emerge through Corona is the ability to tap into communities on the platforms that they're spending their time. So social media usage, digital usage, streaming services, messaging apps have absolutely exploded in usage whilst people have been under these stay-at-home orders and in the restrictions put on them. So what we're finding is that traditionally tourism leaders thought of digital and social channels as a way to communicate their message out in the way that they would do with more traditional advertising. You stand on your pillar, you make your story, you tell people who you are. But actually now with modern technology, and specifically within social media, you can create much deeper relationships with your consumers by interacting with them and asking them for feedback, really engaging with the way they use these platforms to try and understand what matters to them. So with this enormous community that we have, our research team every single week is looking at the opportunities to create Instagram stories that are asking questions of the community, looking at the tools that exist on social platforms, on all the different tools that are available to you to direct message users, set up private messaging groups, set up little research communities to ask in real time consumers what they think about travel and what they care about. And so we've been able to see this really exciting combination of taking the more structured ethnographic, bigger picture research that you get from the big traditional data and research firms, and then combining that with real-time insights from people into their hands on mobile devices, and using that as a way to get a really good pulse on what is happening around the world and what people think, but B, to actually involve them in the creation of the marketing stories and the things that you want to use to get your message out. Now, we feel very, very strongly that as we look at the phases of recovery, that the first and most critical phase for our industry is to win back consumer confidence. Because the most challenging thing I think we face as an industry is the general belief that it will be unsafe to travel. And because different countries and different states around the world are lifting their restrictions at different times, there will be challenges in trying to understand as a consumer, where can I travel? Is it safe to travel? How do I travel? And so recognizing the critical importance of putting health and safety first, you can then use digital and social channels to begin research, insight, and discussion with consumers about how they're feeling, and then use that to shape the way you communicate to them.
And I think that's really something, it's a different way of looking at online audiences in the way that we can consider them as a research value. And, as you mentioned, you've got a big research firms which produce amazing insights, and we've been following them, and many of us have also been seeing those kind of cliff edge graphs which are horrifying to see. But as we start to come out of this, we need to sort of understand that that kind of netnographic element of that, as you mentioned. And I wonder how many brands are even using their existing audience to poll them, to ask them questions, to understand what their needs are. And I guess what you guys have and what you're talking about is kind of macro leveling that to sort of, that 25 million that you spoke about. So tell us a bit about some of the kind of insights that you've already seen just by asking questions and seeing that audience as a really, really valuable focus group that can help you understand the mindset of travelers now and potentially as that evolves going forward.
Absolutely. So we've looked at it in two spheres. One is the macro trends that you've suggested. How are people generally feeling about travel? We know across the board that consumer sentiment about travel is challenged. People are not thinking about traveling immediately today, or at least if they are very much in the inspiration and dreaming stage. So when it comes to thinking about the kind of content that you put out, or the kind of marketing that you want to do, pure play, bottom of the funnel, offers, deals, discounted pricing, that kind of marketing strategy right now today, we would advise against. We feel as though consumers are much more looking for travel and tourism brands to understand that they are potentially fearful about coming back into the world, and therefore looking for more hopeful, inspirational, dreaming content. That for us has been a huge insight. It's helped us shape the way we change the content on our platform. So if anyone follows Beautiful Destinations, they will have seen a marked change in the type of content that we were putting out about 4 weeks ago, when our insights from our social listening and our social polls showed us that people were less keen to see pure travel advertising that incentivized them to book today, and much more open to see positive impact, positive storytelling. So some of the most engaged content that we've been sharing on our own social channels has been wider supportive stories that are coming through Corona. The ways that people have been able to connect digitally, the way people have been able to use music or art or innovative ways to tell a travel story from within their homes. And that's been the kind of thing that is resonating with people at the moment. So that would be the first pillar, I think, on the macro side. On the micro side, we do see an enormous opportunity for any travel and tourism brand to use their own social audience to understand better specific insights for themselves. And that can be as simple as asking, when do you feel like traveling back to us? What are your main concerns about traveling to our destination? And depending on who you are or what you're offering, the results are going to be very, very different. If you are the DMO of a large global metropolis, then you're going to get very, very different responses to fears and concerns from your consumers than you would if you are a luxury hotel in the middle of nowhere that maybe doesn't have the same restrictions on the number of people that might come. And so using that information, you can understand what are the ways that I should be then talking to my consumers. And so for us, really, we feel so passionately about the idea of the so what, now what of research. There are plenty of firms that have the ability to tell you what's happening and give you some of this challenging data you mentioned. But really the focus should be, based on this insight I know from this data, now exactly what do I do? And digital and social channels, we believe, allow you to do that better than anything else.
So it's really about synthesizing and contextualizing that data, and perhaps in many cases the hypotheses that you may have about your customers' needs, about the different pain points along that visitor journey, about what kind of product is going to be appealing, about what kind of hesitations they may have to make that decision, and taking the data, but actually asking the questions and using that as a kind of feedback group.
Exactly. And I think that as a methodology should shape the future of all travel and tourism marketing. As we think about what's coming now in the future, we have the ability today to use the digital and social channels at our fingertips to involve our consumers in the creation of any marketing campaign that we want and any story that we want to tell. And so we do believe so much in this merging of the creativity with science, and using the data and insights from these research polls to inform exactly how you market. We think now more than ever that's so critically important because of this potential lack of consumer confidence that we need to instill before people will feel that they can come back and travel safely and travel close to the way they used to.
It's really interesting because what you're talking about here is something that I think goes in parallel to what a lot of destinations are thinking about in the destination. So one of the things that we've done at the Digital Tourism Think Tank is built a remote design, rebuild, recovery program, which is a co-creation strategic program for destinations to roll out for their whole industry. And it's really cool because it's about co-creation, co-design. But of course, you can do that at an industry level. It's a different thing to take that out to the consumers. And I think what you're talking about is really an opportunity to co-create as an industry and co-create and co-design with your potential visitors. Ask them to help shape those experiences, and ask them to even perhaps develop ideas, not only give feedback on things you have. How, just thinking about all the channels and both what they can offer, but also the limitations of those channels. What is the kind of, give us some ideas of the scope of what you can do in terms of audience engagement and interaction to sort of build those communities?
Yeah, of course. So on the main social channels for us, the Instagrams and the Facebooks and so on, very, very detailed targeting technologies. I'm sure most of the people that are dialed into this call, either they directly or their marketing teams are fully aware of the power of those platforms. The one thing to be aware of is that there has been a pretty fundamental shift by those platforms in restricting the organic reach of your audience. And so although we have an enormous audience, we do have to work harder and harder every single week now to be able to reach that audience by putting out the relevant content that they care about and they'll engage in. So traditionally, we would talk about social media as an organic tool to put out content and tell stories. Now, really, I feel very strongly that the top DMOs, travel brands that are going to be successful are using a combination of their organic channels to put content out, but also they're bringing into their organizations very, very talented media buyers. That is something that we're seeing over and over and over again is making a difference when it comes to activating some of these channels. And the combination of running some more of your paid advertising budget on these platforms that allow you to highly target consumers, see them through their customer journey, link across the different platforms that they're using to make their buying decisions, and then serve them the right content. All of that data now can, if your teams know how to manage it, be presented back to you to inform your strategy, to inform the content that you create, to inform the way that you talk to your audiences. And that's something that we feel has maybe not been as readily embraced by travel yet, but should be something that they look at as we come into this recovery marketing and this new world of travel that we're facing.
Great. Now, of course, I think there are so many different ways of doing that, and I think you kind of touched on a few. Something that every destination can perhaps do is also, as well as polling and asking questions and testing content and things like that, is also build focus groups with their customers and use them to guide them through that strategy remotely. And I think that's something that can give them a lot of detailed understanding of what they're doing right and what they need to do with different global kind of perspectives. I want to kind of jump forwards now into the whole storytelling thing, because we've, I think almost every marketer, I hope, has understood the importance of, powerful, effective, strong storytelling. But what we've seen, and I think this has been the case almost everywhere, is that stories have changed, first of all, and the engagement levels have, hugely been skewed towards stories which are about humanity, stories which are about kind of values. And so there's been this big shift. Now, obviously, you guys are, you have a very, very high inspirational kind of background, a kind of wanderlust audience that wants, to dream that those beautiful destinations, which is what you're about. So, and I know you talk a lot about premium travel and premium experiences. So how do you see that kind of value proposition playing out during and post-recovery in the future? What kind of travel experiences will people want to actually hear about and see?
Yeah, of course. So maybe if I take the first part of the question in terms of the type of content and the way that the content works, I think one of the most exciting things about the new way we're looking at tourism marketing as tourism marketeers is to understand that there is incredible creative talent out in the market that perhaps does not sit within traditional marketing agencies or traditional structures. There are individuals who are incredibly talented at storytelling, but more specifically on the platforms that now really matter to travel and tourism professionals. These are individuals who have the ability to ideate, creative direct, shoot, edit, and distribute content all at the same time. And so as tourism leaders, we have the opportunity to reach out into those creative communities and collaborate with these individuals. So we are seeing and predicting absolutely fundamental changes in the way that tourism marketing works with agencies and different third-party partners. And as an example, you guys put so much value out into the community with a mindset of sharing and learning and collaborative processes. And so we as professionals are able to come in and learn from you. The creative community is doing exactly the same thing. And so when it comes to storytelling, we're seeing these amazingly talented photographers, videographers, marketeers, graphic designers who don't work in these big traditional infrastructures can work anywhere, and most importantly, can make content and help you creatively grow at a fraction of the cost that you used to be spending. And so what we're seeing is more and more opportunity to balance the amount of money that's being spent on the media dollars that you run and the creative work that you do, and actually realize to be successful in this environment, absolutely storytelling is fundamental, but recognizing that different storytelling for different platforms has got to be what you do now. And so a lot of the questions that we're asked are, you guys do these beautiful, 2-minute hero pieces that, they're so premium, they look great. And so the insight for us is, yes, we will continue to do those. And I really think that travel and tourism leaders should continue to do those, but they should also understand that 2 minutes premium hero video is very, very different when it's run as a 6-second pre-roll ad on YouTube, or very, very different again when it's run as a 30 or 40-second TV commercial, and different again when it might show up on TikTok or it might show up on another platform. And I think that's the area that I would really be encouraging travel and tourism marketers to think about, because we did see the emergence of tourism boards probably, I'd say 3 weeks ago, putting out these recovery videos, right? The very inspirational, don't come now, come back later, we'll be here for you. And really the most successful ones were the organizations that put out those hero videos, but made separate edits for all the platforms that they were talking on that had a similar message, but were tailored for those platforms. So I think that's incredibly important. From a storytelling and creative standpoint, as it turns to positive impact and sustainability, we're very passionate advocates of sustainable tourism. We have a meaningful partnership with the World Wildlife Foundation. I'm very proud to be an ambassador for that organization. But really to drive home now, I believe that coming out of Corona, we can't just travel the way we used to travel. We have got to travel more with a sustainable mindset in the background of everything we do. And then as tourism leaders marketing to our consumers, those have got to be some of the messages that we really bring out.
Yeah, I think, we've heard from so many destinations. We do these weekly impact calls every Tuesday, and we hear from different destinations. And I think the one thing that we've been hearing week after week after week is we need to stop. We need to do things differently. We need to use this as an opportunity to reset and to build a more sustainable future, to focus on values, to ensure that even a shift away from mass tourism towards independent travel, towards purpose-driven travel. And I think this is definitely something, it's an opportunity for the industry now to get it right and to rebuild in the right way. And indeed, I think what we see is that many of the businesses that don't adapt and change to incorporate some of those values are also going to be less and less relevant, as the global consumer profile has a very different value set evolving out of this, as we've seen different demographics having different value systems just from how they share and have different lives online. I guess trying to kind of understand what that storytelling side that you spoke about means for destinations. Perhaps I'd like to kind of discuss and explore this with you, because we see the dream now, travel later message, which is powerful. It's evocative. It's pulling those drone shots, those hero clips, and putting often a narration over them, some sort of poetry. And they've really been good in the moment. And we've seen maybe on the kind of a more FMCG level, stories, almost amateur shots, webcam films, mobile phone vertical out on the street TV commercials, which has also been a huge change in terms of video content, typically hero video content that's very amateur and very happy being very amateur. So, balancing that, like crafting and curating a really, really inspirational image versus showing absolute raw authenticity in a very amateur way. Should we be looking coming out of this to actually incorporate both? How do you see those two really different formats, which both kind of powerful?
Absolutely, it's a brilliant point. I'm really glad you brought it up, because I think if it's one of the key insights that people walk away from today with, it is absolutely to embrace all of those different forms of storytelling. I think we as a travel industry have lived in a world traditionally where we have our seasonal campaigns, we put all this time, all this effort, even all this pressure on the big hero TV campaign or main above the line campaign. But now every single day is an opportunity to inspire a person about travel, and you have different tools in your arsenal for the different platforms that you want to be relevant and talking on. And so you may find that a much more engaging representation of your people, of what your travel experience is absolutely to have a phone video shot or a GoPro video shot that really shows the warmth and the kindness of your people, the way that they've come together around challenges like this, the kind of hospitality you can experience when they when a tourist would come to your hotel or your attraction or your destination. And I think that should then be placed onto the platforms where it will be most relevant. And that's really the critical thing, is understanding there are all these different forms of creative storytelling that need to be applied to the right platforms in order to have the maximum impact. And so you can see incredibly powerful campaigns that will have that, big 1 minute or 45-second TV commercial or in-flight commercial that's beautiful and aspirational and cinematic and so on. And underneath that have hundreds of other content assets that ladder up to that same message, but that are suited for the platforms that they're going on and are on varying degrees of I won't say professionalism, because you can still have amazingly professional pieces of content that look raw and authentic and on a phone or on a mobile device. And I think that's incredibly important. And I would really encourage everyone to be thinking like that.
I guess it increasingly comes down to the edit, especially for that kind of content, how you package it, how you bring it together, and how you really kind of select the most powerful stories that other people have produced for you. And I think going back to what you were saying before, it's also about which types of content are going to serve best on which platforms. And there are some spaces where that raw message as it is will work really well, where there are obviously others where that really crafted message is still going to play a role.
It's been actually what we've seen a lot of in the last 4 weeks has been partners asking us to re-edit existing footage. And so given that production teams can't come to countries now, and maybe the limitations on local production teams of going out and traveling may still be in place, it doesn't mean that you can't create new content. And that's something that we're really pushing. More and more inquiries are coming to us and saying, hey, we shot a video last year, beautiful destinations, you have this footage, could you repurpose it in a different way? Could your editors do something different with it? Is there another way that we can cut and splice to tell a story? And I would wager that the people that are listening to this call that have the content at their fingertips, or certainly partners that can help them with content, could create something completely new with their own library of content, other partners' library of content. We have a library of content, and then find a way to go out and tell a new and reinvigorated story. And I think that is one of the shifts that we see going forward, is the ability to really master content so that you can use more and more content assets on different platforms.
Sure, yeah, and I think this is also, if you're following along live and you've got a burning question, because I know people have a lot of questions about, what's the right approach? What's the right technique? Should we do this? Should we do that? Should we talk about this? Or should we, is this something we shouldn't talk about? Should we talk about opening up, So I think, this is an opportunity to field your questions. And in the last 20 minutes, we'll definitely jump into those and try and answer as many questions as we can. We might not have time for all the questions. One of the questions that I've been burning to ask you, Jeremy, is about the ambassadors, right? So, I know that destinations especially have been thinking in the last few years about influencers, about identifying ambassadors in their destination, and also the micro influencers and the global influencers. So global influencers being celebrities, and the micro ones being very niche, kind of niche focused influencers. And then at the destination level, the ambassadors have traditionally been the top chef who's done an amazing dish on an island, and it's brilliant, or someone else who really represents the destination in a brilliant way. But those are tourism ambassadors, because they're very tourism things to do. Do you think we're going to see a different set of ambassadors emerging out of this? Doctors and nurses and I don't know, ministers even potentially. What do you think?
Absolutely. No, you're touching on a trend that we've seen really emerge in the last 4 weeks, actually around ministers of tourism. What we're finding is that so many of the ministers of tourism around the world are the front end of the spear of a wider economic recovery, because they are the individuals that are going out and pushing a part of the economy that can really bring meaningful job creation, meaningful revenues back into a country. And one of the examples I've always loved hearing was when an economist told me that the travel and tourism industry is like the ATM of the world, because the moment that you land in a country, you start to put money into their economy, whether it's the hotel that you're staying at, the taxi that takes you from A to B, the restaurant that you eat in. And so given the immediate impact that travel can have when it comes back online, we are seeing more and more tourism ministers embracing the power of digital and social channels, recognizing the opportunity they have not only to talk within, the four walls of the United Nations World Tourism Organization or the World Travel and Tourism Council, or even setups like this where we're all speaking with each other in the industry. They're realizing that they have the ability to go out into the world and be meaningful spokespeople, because what they stand for is that fundamental belief that we all have, that travel is a force for good in the world, that we need to be getting people back traveling. We need to be embracing these ideals that it's an antidote to racism and bigotry and inequality and so many of these challenges, which at a societal level, there is a very real risk that when we come out of Corona, we are going to see increases in nationalism. We know we are walking into a very, very contentious US election towards the end of the year. We've seen what's been happening over here. I'm based in New York, but we're seeing the same in throughout Europe and around the rest of the world. And I think as people start to lift their boundaries, are they going to say, well, this nation can't come and visit because they were so heavily hit by Corona? Here in New York, we've been very, very heavily hit, and there are other states who are lifting their restrictions earlier. So given that might be a reality, and we were certainly seeing flickers of challenges from more isolationist policies even before Corona hit, I think we have a duty in our industry to step up and collaborate and tell people we are better as a society, we are better as a civilization if we travel and if we connect with each other and if we embrace each other. And you can tell I'm very, very passionate about this as a central theme. And so when it comes to finding potential ambassadors, there are countless numbers of people across society that feel exactly that and can be the spokespeople that get out into the world and represent you as a nation. And ultimately, it is our people that drives travel. We've always said it, and we will find different ways to market and different ways to tell stories. But travel is a fundamentally people-driven business. And the storytelling that we use and the way that we communicate and excite people has got to be going back to those people and putting them into our stories. So yes, there will be a place for celebrity. Of course, there always has been, but I think that is shifting. I think the way that we engage those individuals, it's no longer enough to just have a very high profile, actor or sports person just say, come to my country or stay at my hotel or jump on my cruise. It really must be much better thought through if they align with your cultural values, if they align with what you really stand for. I think a lot of tourism marketers do need to go back internally and really, really realign with what their mission is and why they're doing what they're doing and why we are in our industry. And then that can play out across, celebrities and influencers and the macro stuff and the micro stuff, and all of that comes into place. But what we found, if I could give one practical tip, is to be very, very clear on what your brand positioning is and the story that you want all these ambassadors to be reiterating, so that there is a continual cadence of the same message. I think we run into challenges in travel where you may have the hotel industry going after a certain story, which is slightly at odds to what the tourism ministry is saying, which again is slightly at odds to the cruise industry. And I think you guys have been absolute pillars in bringing people together so that we can all communicate and learn from each other. And I think before you activate any kind of ambassadors, you should absolutely be doing that.
So that's I think a really powerful message. So leadership is something that is going to take on a different meaning coming out of this. And I think what we've seen is a recognition that when we think about humanity, we're all the same, and we can all be, if we just think of the virus, we can all be affected and impacted by it, and it's non-discriminatory. But certainly, I think what you speak about there is a very important message, especially for everyone listening, to think about the role that they have in whatever situation they find themselves in. If you're a CEO of a tourist board, think about how you communicate and educate society and not only market your destination to the whole world, but how you talk about the value and the importance of people coming and sharing and that kind of cultural mix that's happening. Absolutely. I think we see a lot that are going to start with hyper-local and domestic marketing. And even there, we see a split in society where you've got a metropolis, citizenship, and people who live outside of cities. Like you mentioned in the US, you've got this huge disparity of different groups and different classes. And I think even there, we're going to see that division, and that will play out on tourism, because it's traveling that brings those kind of frictions, together, but also it can be seen as a negative thing. So I think there's a real important role there for everyone involved to educate, to share, to help understand the value and the steps being taken to ensure that kind of safety as you do that as well. So thanks.
It's really critical. Just to build on that point, Nick, it's going to be critical for us as an industry to recognise that the challenge I think we will face when we come back into the market, and when we are starting to market and starting to talk about traveling again, is that everyone will be coming back at the same time. And this is something we've never, ever faced as an industry, because talking to that consumer that would come and stay at your hotel or come to visit your country, they are no longer going to be thinking about the 2 or one holiday they do per year. They are either going to be thinking about, how do I get back on my feet and recover financially, or even get a job back that I may have lost, or provide for my family. That will be principal challenges for a very large number of people. But every other industry will be marketing as heavily as they were at exactly the same time. So we're no longer competing with regional competitors or other competing hotels or cruise lines. We will be competing against the electronics guys who haven't been selling TVs for 4 months, the car guys who haven't been selling cars for 3 months. Really, every single industry will be released from the gates at exactly the same time. And so given that travel and tourism has always been a more considered purchase and has always been seen as less of an essential day-to-day necessity, the need to start planning right now is fundamentally critical. And one is because everyone's coming out at exactly the same time. And 2 is because that will dramatically increase the price that it will cost you to get in front of a consumer. We've been looking at research that's showing how much more expensive it will be to advertise on the platforms that we want to advertise on for our partners, when everyone rushes into what's what's coming. And so if you think about ways that you're going to be able to market, you may have to increase the budgets that you were spending to get even close to where you were before. You will definitely have to think more creatively about how you use ambassadors and talent. You will definitely have to think deeper about the storytelling that you use and the channels that you go after. And so that's why I think sessions like this are so critical for our industry, and all the thought leadership stuff that you guys are doing to get people to come together and start acting now is vitally important, even if it's still a few months away before people have the confidence to actually start booking.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point that a lot of people won't have maybe considered is that competition in media space. And not only for travel, but also for everything else. And also the reduction in the market capacity, which many people are, quite rightly, I think, predicting an increase in costs. If we have to take out the middle row of every flight, that's almost unsustainable unless you're hiking up the prices. So there's a lot of very tough questions to ask about who we go for, how we engage them. And I guess it goes right back to, you better be sure to be doing something good. And the reason to travel is because it's so powerful and so transformational that it doesn't have an equivalent currency. It's not the equivalent of an iPhone or something like that. It is literally, it's going to change you, or it's going to help you recover or heal through this process. So I guess we're talking about completely different norms now coming out of this. And this is where, reaching to the last part really is that, how does that look if we think about the traditional marketing playbook, what are those fundamental shifts that, existed yesterday and do no longer exist?
Yes. So I think the idea of spending many, many months to create your campaign, thinking about that one peak season that you're going to drive towards, which is where you put your marketing message out, being quiet for those other parts of the season, that just cannot exist anymore. Really, I think the fundamental change that needs to happen is the idea of consistently creating quality content, consistently being on the platforms that matter, and really showing up over and over and over again. And that may mean changes to the way you structure your marketing teams. That could be changing the way you structure your agency and third-party partnerships. That certainly means changing the way you interact with your consumers and involving them more in the process. And as we think forward, I believe the most successful travel and tourism organizations post-corona will be the ones that have taken this downtime to invest in strategy, to invest in thinking time, to invest in restructuring how they look at marketing, so that when they come out, they are much more nimble, they are much faster, they are far better educated. I would encourage every single person on this call to be spending, at least an hour a day trying to develop some of these new skills, spending time online. I'm sure many people already are, learning about the things that are happening from a marketing standpoint in other industries that are being successful. The New York Times put out a report, I think it was just this past weekend, that was showing different industries that were actually thriving throughout coronavirus. And unsurprisingly, there are the core sort of industries that provide essential goods and necessities, but there are also industries in technology, industries in gaming, who are really innovating and really capturing the way people are spending time at home and spending time on different platforms. And so as a tourism marketeer, how do you change your thinking to embrace things like that, so that when we come out of this, you just have a fundamentally different structure to the way you market? And that may mean changing your media mix. Certainly on the advisory side of our business, we are recommending that our partners move some of their spend, for obvious reasons, away from more traditional out of home or billboard stuff, because people just aren't seeing that. Moving it to more efficient channels where you can measure and you can see impact, the digital and social channels. We all know those. We're certainly also recommending that people think about a budget that they may have had towards that one big advertising campaign being broken down into smaller budgets that are continually run throughout the year. And really, even for those guys that are very much thinking about innovation, giving their employee base, 10% of their time to think outside the box. So you are not alone in being challenged by TikTok. I am absolutely challenged by TikTok. I don't really understand it, to be honest with you. And when my team first said, Jeremy, we need to be on this platform because there's going to be something coming from it, I didn't understand it and I didn't invest in it as much as I could have done. However, they really jumped in, and now we are really building a meaningful business out of how you activate a platform like that. And so you can empower your teams to come forward with that idea. And if you're giving them, 10, maybe even 20% of their time to think about innovation and think outside the box right now, when we have more free time, it will pay dividends when we come out of this.
Very, very strong words. And I think, what you say about using that 10%, it's something we can apply when we come back. It's something that many of the brands, maybe that are not found a way out of this, but are certainly creating traction and engagement. And so they're probably tipped to be in a better position once things do start to recover, have really changed and reinvented and repositioned themselves completely. But the travel and tourism industry is a mix of huge enterprises and many micro 1 and 2 person businesses. And so if you're a CEO of a tourist board and you think, what's the message I can take to my business community, or you're a global brand and you're thinking, what do we, what's the right way to do right now? I think, if you're out of business, which many people are, this is the opportunity. Use this moment to re-strategize, rebuild, and redefine that story. Because once it starts again, as you said, Jeremy, it's going to be, very, very, very competitive. And this is your only window to completely turn it around and be ready to kind of switch it on the minute that happens. So I think that's something that everyone can do, and then keep that 10%, because that creativity is so important. Right, we're going to jump into some questions. We already kind of alluded to it with the first one. Whilst we just gather the questions, I just want to say that Beautiful Destinations and the Digital Tourism Think Tank have put together a program. It's free for destinations to enroll on, and it's going to be kicking off by having a huge industry, huge consumer focus group with the Beautiful Destinations audiences. So if you have questions that you want to put to them, this is a really great opportunity to jump into that. So we'll be sending out information after this on how you can sign up to that, and that's completely free of charge. And together with that, you also get 3 months free membership for the DTTT. That's also something we're doing just to say thank you and support everybody in this really difficult period. And to do that, we've also created this open source, free Impact Heart, which is support tourism, impact real people. And the message is really simple and clear. By supporting tourism, you can impact real people's lives, whether that's yourself as a traveler and the transformative effect, or whether that's the people in a community who depend on travel. So we've created a whole set of social assets that you can use to badge your content, to do whatever you want with it. And we're very happy for you to use that in any way you want, as long as it's with that sense of purpose in mind. And another thing that we've done is created a free industry community on industry.thinkdigital.travel, where we're discussing and engaging the industry all the time about these things. And so that's where we'll be sharing some insights coming forward. And of course, if you're a DMO, we have this free membership right now. So I really hope that everybody will join us on that. I really hope that you'll jump into that and be part of that global conversation as we go forward, because we're certainly going to be dipping into the beautiful destinations, huge audience of every kind, and trying to understand what their feelings and really trying to apply empathy in how we strategize and understand things there. So do join us for that. Right, the first question we have is from Sam Martin, and he says he's from no, hang on. Sorry, from Sam Martin. Sorry, that was completely wrong. Sam Martin is not the one who sent the question. Sam Martin is our question sender. Fernando from Tiempo Libre Argentina asks, do you think that this world situation is an opportunity to start creating virtual tourism? We've seen a lot of this kind of stuff. So what's your whole view on virtual tourism? Is it the right thing to do right now? Like, is there anything other than, interesting engagement? Does it have another potential?
Yeah, so I think if we look at the funnel that we're aiming for, top of the line, brand awareness, staying front of mind for consumers, Fernando, I think that's exactly what you should do. Ways to innovate around getting your message out there and staying top of mind for consumers is exactly how you should be thinking. And there are clues in culture that will allow us to take insight for what we can do. So we are seeing, for example, the data showing enormous spikes in the use of gaming platforms like Twitch, which is owned by Amazon, other gaming networks, where we're seeing consumer attention coming into one place in a field that's traditionally outside of tourism. So why don't we think about how to show up on platforms like that? So a virtual tourism game that would fit into a gaming platform makes a ton of sense. If you have development resource at your fingertips to help you to build something, if you have a way to reach out to some of these gaming platforms and say to them, we have something that we think would add value to your user base, then absolutely go for things like that. Now, the social media usage and the streaming services usage is the obvious stuff. People are spending more time on those platforms, but there are plenty other ways that you can look at innovating. And I think virtual tourism is an absolutely great way to start. What we've been seeing is the people that are innovating in that space have been able to do so without spending lots of money. They don't have to send, big virtual reality production crews out there. They're doing things light touch, easy and quick. And I'd certainly advocate for continuing to do something like that. And at risk of sounding like a broken record, I would engage your community. Ask them, is this the kind of stuff that you want to see? We, as marketeers, we no longer operate in a vacuum where we sit in a room and one creative person or creative team comes up with the idea that's going to knock it out in the market. We're not in the Mad Men era anymore for lots of good reasons. And so we can involve people in that decision making, and then they will be more invested in the end product you put out, and you will have a better result.
Yeah, and I think we've just seen so many examples. So probably the risk of this is just, just as with the recovery marketing, we're also seeing right now a saturation of really great virtual content. Yeah. And so this is probably one of the biggest challenges, is how do you now create something which cuts through that? I think we've seen a lot of virtual galleries, virtual museums, virtual festivals, virtual events. Yeah. I guess it also comes down to the experience that you're creating and making sure it really kind of lifts above the rest, right? I mean, there's probably no magic wand to that. You've got to test and see what works. And it may be that your own customer group is going to immediately engage with whatever you give them, as long as it's genuine and strong and powerful. But then there's that potential to reach a much larger customer base by creating something which kind of lifts above everything else that's happening, because it's unique, because it's creative, and because it kind of, I guess a principle to apply in business, content, anything, is make sure you give users what they need. And what they need might be to feel good, or what they need might be to learn a new skill or learn how to do something. So you kind of have to think about what can we give back. And it might be a kind of a feeling, but it also might be something very functional. And every business and destination can give one or both. So, if you're Denmark, for example, you could teach the world, this is actually quite a good idea, you could teach the world about hygge, and how to live a better life, and that's a really strong on-brand message that they can give to the world. So I guess this is something that everybody can think about in this virtual world we live in now, is what can I give back? And maybe not always going with the business model first, because you need to see what engages first. Right, next question is from someone in the UK, and it is indeed very sunny. I'm in the UK, and I can see that it's very sunny early morning in New York as well, so this is a good thing. How do you think we can counter fake news on the virus and actually base our marketing on true and relevant information for traveling clients?
Sorry, I didn't catch that first bit. How can we do what, Ray?
How can we counter fake news on the virus and actually base our marketing on true and relevant information for traveling clients? So I guess, if we think about how fake news might kind of emerge itself, it's, we saw at the start a lot of superstition about plane travel and the recycling of air. And the airlines quickly came out and said, well, actually, this is how the air is recycled, and it's cleaner than the air in your house. So how does the industry respond to fears, I guess, which start to become fake news?
Yeah, it's a great question, and unfortunately, there is no definitive answer. I think it depends on every single individual case. What we've found is, because many of our clients have faced narratives like that, where something may have created the impression, for whatever reason, that you shouldn't travel to that destination or to that property. Really, the most important thing we feel is to be able to get a handle of the message yourself. Very, very often, what a destination or a travel marketer will do is have their narrative shaped by the mainstream media and not be able to harness the digital and social tools that they have at their disposal to communicate the things that they know to be the truth and that they feel will be the things that are most relevant for consumers. We do spend a lot of time with the different ministers of tourism that we work with, and the different CMOs and CEOs within travel brands, walking them through things like reputation management, how you deal with crisis, how you actually manage to own your own narrative, and then use the platforms that are right there for you that can get that message out. And so I think really it's a very, very complicated place to be, because we're seeing very positive things happen when you do that and you communicate clearly and honestly and quickly through digital and social channels. But then equally, you're seeing responses with fake content and stories that are untrue coming out on those platforms. So if you don't have a person or certainly a team within your business that is focused on that, I would certainly invest in looking at that, because we're going to see different stories about the safety of traveling. We're going to see different stories about whether or not you should or shouldn't travel to different countries. And of course, everybody wants tourism to come back to their destination because of all the economic, cultural, societal, human benefits that it brings. And so really, you just have to make sure that you're in control of your story and you're putting out what the truth is.
Yeah, I think this is one of those moments where a strong branded message needs to pause for a completely straight and honest information and the need for information. And if you're the custodian of that brand, who is the best person to, with integrity and with trust, deliver that message? KLM is a great example that, early on they had a blog written by, I think they have a chief doctor or something. I guess an airline as big as KLM would have someone like that, who basically wrote down a detailed explanation of what the risk was. So they actually didn't say there was no risk. They acknowledged there was a risk, but also what measures they take and how the risk compared to other scenarios. So I think it's important to be honest and allow people to make a choice based on the information that they have and that they can trust. So those figures, as Jeremy suggests, it is important that to answer those kind of questions, you have a trustworthy, independent, if it's possible, person who can provide that guidance and can provide that information. And you can not only explain what you're doing, but you can also ensure that you refer back, even if it's referring to we follow this guidance. So that's where we can also use our channels for information as well as building an image. Great, thanks very much. Good question from Dan. So going to our next question, it's from Kira. and she asks, is social media still differentiated by age? Should we look to market specific age groups? And how do we attract the older traveler with social media? I think that's a really interesting one, because as social media grew up, we were just obsessed with millennials and Gen Z. Is it still right to bucket different demographic groups in that way?
I don't think so, really. And based on the data that we're seeing coming out of the digital and social platforms now, they are so ubiquitous that they're being used across the board. Certainly pre-corona, Facebook announced that the largest and heaviest user group of their platform was the over 55s. They were seeing the most rapid growth in those user groups. And I find it funny now, because I connect with my mum, obviously, through Zoom calls, and she tells me how she's closer to her friends, and my mother's over 65, because she's connecting on Facebook, and she's in these groups where she's able to interact in the way that she would out in the open world. So first answer to your question, no, I believe that the majority of people are using some form of social network and certainly some form of digital channel. So no matter who your end customer is, they should be meaningful platforms in your marketing strategy. Certainly not the only platform, but definitely the most meaningful. We are seeing lots of different data sources, and as with anything, we're seeing conflicting views, but there is a theme and a trend emerging that perhaps the earliest consumers coming back to travel, this was certainly validated by the World Travel and Tourism Council, would be millennials, who felt as though their immune systems were less compromised by corona, and they also felt as though they were really struggling being under quarantine and just wanted to get out. And we know, and it's been said for many years, that there is a far greater propensity to travel in that consumer base, because they care less about physical products and they care much more about experiences. So I do think there is value in considering marketing strategies from a phased approach that looks at millennials and younger consumers being those first people that will come back. Nick touched on it earlier, but domestic and local travel, again, the predictions are that will be where we see growth coming back in the first phase. And certainly there are predictions that business travel will be significantly slower. And, we're all connecting here on digital platforms, and as we see the growth of the really meaningful conferences, we're also going to see the growth of digital conferences and digital business, where we don't need travel in the way that we did in the past. So I would think of all demographics as being possible to talk to on digital and social channels, and yeah, I wouldn't think of it just as the millennial and Gen Z platform anymore.
Yeah, and I think just to allude to what you were saying, or reference what you're saying, we've set out 5 different phases for recovery. So remote travel being what some of the questions were relating to, the hyperlocal being the second part, staycation, travel closer to home, so regional and cross-border travel amongst countries, and then the new normal, which is nothing like the normal. So I think this is something that we will certainly build our narrative and our strategies around. Certainly something we'll reflect on when we engage that global focus group, when we roll out that program together with Beautiful Destinations. And we'll really try to understand at each phase, what people need, what their pain points are, what they feel and want, and how best to respond to them as brands. I guess the key thing here is to put to stop what you've been doing and to start to think about doing everything completely differently. What's the kind of one takeaway message that you would have, Jeremy, for everybody watching?
Well, first, just a very heartfelt thank you. This is a difficult time for all of us. We know how challenging it is for every single player in the travel and tourism industry. And I think really just to reiterate exactly what Nick said. So obviously a huge thank you to you, Nick, and to your team and to World Travel Market. But I'd say that the one big insight is we can get back and bounce back faster as an industry if we come together. If we share knowledge, if we share insights, if we share resources. It's one of the things that I have found the most rewarding of the travel and tourism industry, is that because it's built on people and connections, we do help each other. And right now, it is more critical than ever that we come together in environments like this and we share insights and we share ideas. So although we haven't been able to get into everyone's questions, please let us know if you'd like us to do a session like this. Tell the WTM guys, Nick and his team, and certainly we will jump in and be supportive of that and be involved. Please reach out, obviously, to Nick directly, to myself directly. We will circulate contact details so you can get in touch with us, and then we will have a way to share more of this in a more formal structure, and even interact with individuals one-on-one that want to develop these tools and put them into practice. So yeah, just a big thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We can only do this together. I think we need to consider the unconsiderable, and we need to consider working with competitors, working in different ways, and just keep the most open mind possible. Try to see the opportunity in this darkness, which is which is hard, but I think it's the only choice we have. And thank you very much, Jeremy, for sharing really, really amazing insights, because I think without all of those insights, we couldn't have really explored this kind of consumer digital graph that we've become so used to talking about, the hype and the excitement of growth and trends. And now, it takes on a more important meaning, I think, in terms of what we can learn from those audiences online. And it will definitely, as we've been discussing, be the most important thing to challenge and level everything we're doing with those audiences as we go forward. We've had more than 1,300 viewers watching, so we're really pleased that you joined us. As Jeremy said, tell everybody that you want to see us back, and we will be back. And a huge thanks to the WTM team for putting this together. We really appreciate that. Thanks to Sam, who's been fielding the questions and even got turned into a mini celebrity on this call. So we really appreciate that. And he's typing now, probably telling me get off and hang up. So thank you very much, Sam. Thanks for the rest of the team at WTM. There's it is companies also like WTM that are working in also the most unprecedented situation. I mean, they've also been impacted and disrupted. That whole sector is just challenged, and they run into the fire. They try to kind of be there for the industry. So I think it's also a great sign of leadership. So thanks a lot for inviting us, and we will definitely be back to share more insights. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Thanks to all of you for joining.
Thanks, guys. Bye now.
Bye.